Well, we should probably start just so we can get going. All right, Anishinabe, greetings all. We are going to start out with a survey so we can just see where everyone's at in knowing about Indigenous inclusion into the classroom. So I will also work on admitting the people as they come in, but I'll send, Janine will send the survey in the chat and we'll work on that for about 3 minutes. And then we'll probably send in the chat again in case we get some people in and they don't see it.
It is in the chat box, so if you all want to go ahead and click on that, we'll give you 3 minutes to fill that out. And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer now, Amanda. And I'm going to leave my mic on so that you can hear the alarm on my phone.
Okay, sounds good.
Hi, Amanda.
Oh. What?
Oh.
You kind of cut out, Erica.
Oh, I might have bad Wi-Fi. I'm going to stay on with the camera off, but I just want to see how.
Good to see you.
See you too. Looking for.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome.
Hi, how are you guys tonight?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. I'm really interested in what we'll be sharing tonight. I work at the Monroe County ISD, and I was recently posted at the River Raisin National Battlefield Park. And so we do a lot of work with interpreting all points of view that occurred during the battle. And I understand that it's estimated that 19 tribes were represented during that battle. And so we're doing a lot of work at the park to make sure that we are very inclusive. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to learn from you all tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chuck. Okay, we've got just over a minute left.
And did everyone get the survey link? Or do we need to send it again?
I'm sorry, I did not get it.
The survey link is going to be in the chat box.
Okay, let me click on it real quick then.
Oops.
So Amanda, we've got about 15 seconds left.
Well, I will bring up the poll, hopefully. So I'm stopping the share for a second just to share again the poll results. Okay, so it looks like we've got 3 responses right now. And I just wanted to go over the questions, just see how everyone feels and how comfortable they are teaching about Anishinaabek content. Can everyone see my screen? All right, great. So this is what we've gotten so far. And a little quiz about how many tribes are in Michigan. And if you it had the incorrect answer, you will find out during this. And then how often do you teach about Anishinaabe people or Indigenous people? And what tribes do you teach about? And just curious about your go-to resources. And what could you use more of? So I just thought that was a good way to start to see where everyone's at right here. So I'm going to stop. Well, I think I can just switch over right now. Can everyone see it? Great. So I'll start presenting. So any Amanda Weiner, Minwa Watchman, Quickly, Indigenous Cause, Mako and Dodam, Escanaba, Minwa, Garden Peninsula and Donjaba, Padaski and Doda, Anishinabe Kwe and Dao, Ojibwe, Minwa, Odawa, Nahau Misoe. My name is Amanda Weiner. I work for the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians in the education department as their curriculum specialist. And I've been working in this position since 2016. And so we do a lot of work in getting Indigenous perspective in all classrooms, grade levels, and subject areas as much as possible. So I really enjoy the work that we do around social studies, and we've done a lot of work with trying to get as much inclusion in the standards, and we want to help teachers be able to better their work too. So I'm still admitting some people in. All right. So I have on here, and we'll send out a link to this slideshow because we have a lot of information embedded within it. So here's my contact information, link to our tribal government website and our Facebook like page. And then we'll move on to Janan.
Miigwech Amanda, Ani Buju, Mishike Kwe Indigenous Cause, Michigan Dodam, Odawa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Mi'kmaq, Taina, Anishinaabe, Kwe, and Dao, Little Traverse Bay Bands, Odawa, and Doda Bindagwas, Education Director in Donangje. So I just introduced myself in Anishinaabe Moan language, just as Amanda did. And I just wanted to share that that's an important way for us to honor our ancestors, honor our language, and connect with land. And so that's why we do that. So to give you my introduction in English, my name is Janan Koto. I am the Education Director for the Gun Lake Tribe. I'm a multi-tribal Anishinaabe Kwe, or woman, with Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi and Taina heritage. I'm a citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians. I'm Turtle Clan. And I've been working in Indigenous education for 14 years. I've worked in both urban and reservation communities with the goal of contributing to the educational sovereignty, healing, and well-being of tribal nations and citizens. And fun fact about me, I am a fan of the Oxford comma. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we get into our story about how we've contributed to the Anishinaabek enhancements to the K-12 social studies standards, we first wanted to acknowledge and honor our ancestors, as well as those who came before us in this important work. And we wanted to do that because there is a long history of really important work that's been taken up by Native educators and advocates in Michigan, from Margaret Boyd, who is pictured on the left. She was an Odawa Kwe, or woman from Northern Michigan, born in 1817, who was educated in Cincinnati and returned home to fight for education and land rights, to Paul Johnson, who was pictured on the right, whose 1972 lawsuit against the University of Michigan led to the eventual creation of the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver. And we want to acknowledge that we stand on the shoulders of those giants, and we humbly take the baton to carry on this work. Next slide, please. So to understand our journey of advocating for Anishinaabek enhancements to the standards, it's first important that we frame the work in the context of government to government relations. The collective work that has gone into advocating for the enhancements to the standards is really best understood through the lens of what we call tribal consultation. What this means is that it's important to understand the concept of tribal sovereignty. So since time immemorial, tribes have maintained their own forms of tribal governments. And as political sovereigns, tribes have exercised and continue to exercise our inherent right to govern our own affairs. And therefore, tribes are not merely a homogeneous minority group or stakeholder group, but as sovereign nations, we maintain a unique political status, and we should be addressed accordingly. Government to government tribal consultation with tribes on educational issues is actually required by the federal ESSA law. And not only is it the law, but it's generally considered sound management policy and the right way for the United States to conduct business with tribes. And so following suit, the state of Michigan has also institutionalized tribal consultation. And there have been 3 executive orders issued pertaining to tribal consultation. And these include Governor Granholm's executive directive from 2004, Governor Snyder's executive directive from 2012, and Governor Whitmer's executive directive from 2019. I did want to point out that there are 12 federally recognized tribes in the state of Michigan. So for those of you who did not get the correct answer, now you know. Those tribes include the Bay Mills Indian Community, the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, Hannahville Indian Community, the Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, Lac Vieux Desert Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, the Matchee-Benashewish Band of Potawatomi Indians, or the Gun Lake Band, which is the tribe that I work for, the Nottawasepi Huron Band of Potawatomi, Pokagon Band of Potawatomi, Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, and the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians. Next slide, please. So I wanted to help you all understand the leadership in this work. And so it's important that we introduce you all to this group. So the major efforts that were taken up of organizing and providing feedback to the MDE on the draft social studies standards was spearheaded by the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Education Directors, or CMTED. CMTED is a group consisting of the education directors of the 12 federally recognized tribes of Michigan. We meet quarterly, and we're a group that advocates for and addresses critical issues related to education and the tribes in Michigan. Next slide, please. So with having been introduced to that group, I wanted to move on to telling our story now. And so before we were really able to get things moving, CMTED and our political leaders at the tribes really needed to do a lot of advocacy with the MDE to educate and make clear that tribes are not a stakeholder group. We're not like other minority groups, we're political sovereigns, and we are forms of government, and that, you know, this work and our input is not stakeholder input, but rather tribal consultation. And so once we did that work of advocacy and educating around tribal sovereignty and government to government consultation, CMTED spearheaded the gathering of input from each of the 12 tribes' education departments, their cultural programs, as well as their environmental programs. We gathered that input into a single document and submitted it as the CMTED group to the MDE back in 2015 when the first round of input was being collected. And at that time, simultaneously, we went to our tribal political leaders and we asked them to send letters that were signed by our political leadership, typically our tribal chairs, that went to the State Board of Education, supporting the changes that were submitted by CMTED to the MDE with regard to the social studies standards. As you all know, there was a second round of social studies updates that were undertaken. In 2018 and 2019, CMTED really helped in organizing other tribal educators and concerned parents. We really advocated that they attended the listen and learn sessions that took place in 2018 and 2019. And the screenshot that you see on the screen here is from a document that was sent out through our networks, our social media, that was shared and informed folks about when those listen and learn sessions were taking place. We also developed a guidance document for folks to use in giving feedback on the MDE's website on the social studies standards. Next slide, please. So in addition to those efforts, including the document of the collective standards update recommendations, organizing folks, attending listen and learn sessions, advocating that folks give public comment, tribal educators also applied for positions on the social studies standards work groups. These groups included K4, High School US History, and the Bias Review Committee. And what you'll see pictured on the slide here are some of the folks that were involved in that work. So from left to right is Melissa Isaac. She's the education director for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe. She's also the current chair of the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Education Directors, and she sat on the Bias Review Committee. Next to her is Robin Lees. She's a retired elementary teacher and a Little Traverse Bay Bands elder. You'll see myself and Amanda there next to her. The three of us, Robin, Amanda, and I, sat on the K4 committee. Eric Hemingway, the director of the LTVB, Little Traverse Bay Bands Archives and Records Department, sat in on the high school US history work group, and Judy Pamp, an educator from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe and member of the Michigan Indian Education Council, also sat in on the work group. So that was another way that we were able to give input. Next slide, please. Okay, so the recommendations that CMTED focused on through our multi-pronged approach included inclusion of Indigenous content, both pre and post 1900. We felt it was really important for Michigan students to learn about tribes in the context of the more recent past, as well as the present, as tribes have contributed to the political landscape, the economy, and the culture of Michigan greatly. Our recommendations also focused on the study of tribal governments, as well as the use of updated and appropriate terms to refer to tribal nations. And thankfully, our multi-pronged approach was successful in increasing the inclusion of Indigenous content to over 50 references to tribes and tribal issues in the standards. And what you'll see pictured here on this slide is some of our work on the forthcoming standards resource guide, which is intended to provide teachers support in teaching to the updated standards. And in the photo, which features Amanda hard at work, we have a side-by-side comparisons of the standards from 2007 to 2019 pulled up there on the projector. And you'll see links to that side-by-side comparison in the next slide here. Next slide, please. Thank you. So What you see here on this slide is a screenshot that shows that side-by-side comparison of the 2007 standards to the 2019 standards. Both of these standards on the screen are from high school civics. And as you'll notice, both standards from 2007 shown on the slide make no reference to tribes or tribal issues. Whereas the 2019 standards include mentions of tribal sovereignty, tribal governments, and treaties with the tribes. And with that, I will pass the baton to Amanda so she can tell a little bit about the next chapter in this work and the development of the resource guide that is coming out for teachers to support them in teaching to the new standards.
So our forthcoming resource guide is named Madonganan, and it was gifted, the word for it, the title for it was gifted to us by an Anishinaabe Moan teacher and language specialist from the Saginaw Chippewa tribe, Isabella Slamick, and somebody that works on this committee with us, Melissa Isaac, she reached out to her and had a good meeting with her, presented her with Samar, tobacco, and some gifts, and asked for this word in a really good way so we could have an Anishinaabe one word for this document. So this explains on where the root of the word is. It comes from gathering information. It can imply events, books, links. It comes from the word share. It comes from the word gathering of things. And it comes from a word that also means gathering of people. So in this work, we also reached out to other tribal educators and the new director of the Native American Studies program at Northern Michigan University, Amber Morso. She said that she, in her spare time, really likes to do art. And so she volunteered to paint this. She painted this, and she's going to do the graphic work for the whole resource guide. And within the guide, she'll have given an artist statement of her intent of this work, but from our conversations, I can give a little bit of like context to it. So it features wigwas or birch bark, and that's going to be used because it's historic to Anishinaabe people. Historically and contemporary, it's very significant. And we are still practicing traditions such as building G-mons or canoes, which is pictured here. We're still practicing teaching on the land and learning from the land and eating from the land. So it shows some teachings of kids picking berries. It also depicts three fires to signify the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, often referred to as the three fires. And some clan animals are also here, Zizak and turtle, crane and turtle. So we're really excited to see the rest of the work she's going to do with that. And we have more previews along the way of the youth artwork that's featured in it. And here are the other people that are involved in this besides me. Stephanie, she is with MSU's Undergraduate Diversity. She's assistant director there. Kriya is with the Indigenous Education Initiative, an initiative of Michigan Department of Education. Melissa, who we've talked about, and she was in other pictures, she is also part of it, and she is the director of education at the Saginaw Chippewa tribe and a leader in CMTED. Melissa Kieswater is with Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And so this is the team. We meet, we've been meeting for over a year, and we meet almost weekly. So there's a lot of work into this, and you'll see some of the stuff throughout these slideshows, and we're looking forward to bring out this resource guide. So here is an outline of what's coming. So we're going to start out with an opening and acknowledgements of all the people that have helped us with this and kind of set the stage of what we want teachers to be able to teach and how they can connect that with the standards updates. So we're going to have migration and creation stories, talk about the ill practice of always teaching the Bering Straits theory as if it's cut and dry and that's what it is, but in reality it is a theory, and how to approach teachings about traditional stories and storytelling. The resources will be broken down by K4, 5, 8, and 9, 12. As you see here, we have some topics that will start with pre-contact, early Anishinaabe life, contact, trade, environment, treaty rights, citizenship, sovereignty, tribal governments, boarding schools, civil rights, and fish wars. The boarding schools, there's a link, hyperlink there when I send everything out. It's a great resource and it connects with that standard listed there, and it's from the Z-Wing Center. So we'll send out that so you guys can click through all these hyperlinks here too, because we don't have enough time to get through all the information I want to give you. What else is going to be on here is links to the spreadsheet with the resources, and we're adding to it as we go. So it's going to be a living document. And so then we also we want to give you some compelling questions, prompts, activities. We'll have scholarly resources. Some of them are hidden behind a paywall and you might need an account, but we're going to try to find the best way that you can access them. But we'll still have them listed in case if you have access. We'll state the criteria for choosing and how we evaluate resources, preferred language for each tribe in Michigan, summaries of each tribe, structures and descriptions of tribal governments, and then we'll also have maps of reservation boundaries, service areas, and treaty boundaries. A lot of this work was inspired by the American Indian Studies in Wisconsin Act 31. It's a resource manual from the Lakota Ojibwe Community College Library, and they have got a lot of great stuff in their resource guide, so feel free to browse through that too when you get the link. So we conducted a youth art survey, youth art contest, and this is some of the work that's going to be in the resource guide. So that's also featured through this. So we're going to dive into some of the resources that we are going to share within the guide and that you can easily use as soon as we send the information. So we're going to start with some K5, and this article is from the National Council for the Social Studies in their publication, Social Studies and the Young Learner. The Turtle Island Social Studies Collective wrote this piece, and it's called Beyond Pocahontas, Learning from Indigenous Women Change Makers. And it's targeted for 3rd through 5th grade. The book pictured here, The Water Walker, is in it. And that was also a book that's already embedded in our resource spreadsheet. So I thought that was a really great connection. So they have some inquiry-based learning projects within that article, Learning from Indigenous Women Changemakers. I also have another resource guide in here. The publisher of the book has a teacher resource guide for grades 1st through 3rd. And then there's another learning resource that's in that Google Drive from another Native educator. She created it for her own kids during the pandemic for her 2nd and 6th graders, and it's all about water too, so it'll be a really great connector. So that's included in there too. Some of the other resources that are K5, this one, Ancestors, Archaeology, and the Anishinaabek, Bridging the Past into the Future, was a project that I worked on a couple of years ago, and it's 2 curriculum units, one for 3rd and one for 5th grade. And it was a large collaboration between 10 of the 12 in Michigan tribal nations had representatives at the table when discussing this work. And then we also had other agencies, universities, private organizations. And this came from work on M231, and MDOT came across some cache pits. And so this is an archaeological exploration, but with tie-ins to really important Anishinaabek food items, Neme and Mnomen, lake sturgeon and wild rice. So we talk about that a lot through these 2 units. And this book, I think, is a really great tie-in to it. And there's links here, a read along about I am sturgeon, and a PDF of the storybook. This is another great resource to use along with the ancestors archaeology in Anishinaabek. It is a game developed by an intern for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission based out of Wisconsin, but they do treaty rights education for Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. So a lot of the stuff that they have available is also relevant to Michigan, and they're a really great resource. So this interactive game is where you can learn about treaty rights from sugar bush spearing, monoman harvesting, and you're playing as either Tommy or Annie Sky, and they're Ojibwe youth sent on a mission by their grandmother to learn about important traditions. So here is linked an article about the person that created this game, and then the game itself. Another K5, this was a project that you might be familiar with, Michigan Open Book Project. The Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Education Department took part of this in creating this online open source textbook. And we did a lot of work throughout it, but we have the most content in 3rd grade, chapter 4. There's a PDF linked there. So within that, there's a clickable map that you can, I hope if I click on it, you can see it when I share. So if you just click on any area, so this is Grand Traverse in Peshabi Town. So you see their tribal flag, where they're at, and the name of each tribe. And it's an interactive map like that. And then there's another map or another slideshow, interactive slideshow of tribal youth and showing their favorite things to do. And so it's very easy for kids to identify with and see other kids within the textbook. And so then there's more maps to include in resource guide. And this is a screenshot of the My Open Book project that features a quill work artist, Yvonne Walker-Kijik, and it has a video, and then it features this little girl at a powwow. So we're pretty proud of the work in that because we had a lot in that, and so we wanted to highlight that. So on to some different grade levels, 6 through 8. So these are within the resource guide spreadsheet. And so this will be, you can use that right away as soon as I send out the link. So for example, for 6 through 8, these 2 standards, it's going to play the video and we don't have time to listen to it, but it's embedded so you can listen to it when you can. So this is 6 and 8. So this one's about citizenship. And the citizenship one is from a radio show, Native American Calling. And so they interviewed people from different tribal nations. They interviewed Aaron Payment from Sault Ste. Marie tribe. He's the chair there. And then a Mohawk and Lakota leader too. So giving multiple perspectives of what it means to be a tribal citizen. And then this one talks about treaties. So this really great NPR educational video is why treaties matter. And it features LTBB citizen elder leader Frank Edowagijik, and he also helped us through the work of the resource guide and helped us make decision on some of the content. And here's some information on 9th and 12th grade standards. I created this Google Drive through the work we were doing, and I also heard from a teacher that was mine when I was in high school, and Erica's on here. She reached out, and I started making this drive because I knew that there was a need for it, that people are looking for content for these new standards. So there's this link to this Google Drive here. So we're going to have tribal government operations, tribal constitutions, information on civics, government sovereignty, and treaties. And then we also have a lesson that's within a STEM unit that our department created, the NMA teachings. Well, one of our lessons is about treaty rights of the Great Lakes. So there's a link to that. And then I also have materials for evaluation and tribal inclusion. So hopefully this is a good start for anyone. And we have more resources embedded within the spreadsheet. And now we want to get onto some best practices. I wish I could share even more resources, but to get everything in, so we're going to get to best practices. And we picked these from this National Council for the Social Studies position statement from 2018 towards responsibility, social studies education that respects and affirms Indigenous peoples and nations. So number 1, commit to responsible representations. 2, teach current events and movements. 3, teach tribal governance and sovereignty as civics education. 4, challenge Eurocentrism. 5, affirm Indigenous knowledges. 6, learn from longstanding Indigenous advocacy for curriculum reform, foster relationships, and engage in meaningful consultation. So, and that's also something during this presentation, I feel like that we were using these best practices and that we want to show that this is the best way to teach these standards and moving forward in teaching about Anishinaabek and Indigenous people. This is another article that I think is helpful, and this is also embedded in this slideshow that we'll send to you. These two from National Council for the Social Studies are not available unless if you have a login. So I had already saved them before that came up. I went to go find the link recently and it said I couldn't access it, but I had luckily saved it. It's in the Google Drive. So you should be able to look at these two in here. And I really liked the terms, keywords, and definitions they use within this article. And I think these will be helpful for anyone looking to enhance Anishinaabe inclusion. We have another resource folder, assessment and evaluation tools, so you can assess your own bias review of materials, because we know you're going to find stuff too, and you want to make sure it's going to be the best thing that you can teach. So these materials are hopefully going to help you with this historical and primary document analysis worksheet for students to use, but I think it would also be a great tool for anyone to use when they're evaluating a resource to bring into the classroom. So within this drive, we have resources from Education Northwest, Montana's Office of Public Instruction, their Indian Education Division, Oyate, and Dr. Marty Reinhardt and Tracy Haday. So all those are within this Google folder to really help you assess things along the way. And just to point out some good examples of bad examples, for lack of a better phrase or words. So Sleeping Bear Press, Kathy Jo Worgan, is used pretty often. So I use two commonly used resources. So she's a non-native author and often uses non-native illustrators. So they're really appropriating stories, and there's a lot of stereotyping in them. There's an article linked here, a review by Lois Beardsley. She's an Anishinaabe teacher, artist, author, and she gives a review on the legend of the Petoskey Stone and explains why there's appropriation happening in that. And often people use the Oakland Public Schools social studies curriculum, and I usually advise against that, because anything like that or anything popular curriculum that has not been consulted with tribes severely lacks the best way to present Anishinaabe content. So these two examples are commonly used and do not align with best practices. And just be cautious, there's still many resources out there designed to meet the 2007 standards and use outdated terminology, because we actively changed wording from American Indian to Anishinaabek or Indigenous. And so we want people to realize that we are advocating for not using American Indian at this time and really focusing on who you're talking about, Anishinabe, Ojibwe, Odawa, or Potawatomi. So be cautious in that, proceed with caution with anything that you're thinking about presenting into your classroom. So we suggest searching books and authors on this blog, American Indians in Children's Literature. The search bar is on the top left corner. That's also a good reminder for me, because I've definitely forgot how to search on this website. So hopefully that's a good resource that you can utilize right away. So, and on to like how our work still continues. I'm part of the teacher preparation standards for 5th through 9 and 7 and 12. So I'm on the main group and the steering committee, and my focuses during this project, it will be economics and equity. we wanted to highlight some recommended professional development. This Wisconsin one, it's already tomorrow, but I thought it was important to add it on here because just to look out for more information from their Social Studies Council, because their focus, their main bullet point on this is decolonize instruction and strategies for implementation. So that's pretty awesome to see on a statewide social studies conference. Wisconsin, they have one that started on the 17th and goes through April, and their sessions will include a lot of Indigenous content because in Wisconsin, teachers, in order to teach in Wisconsin, have to be very versed in Indigenous studies to be able to teach in public schools of Wisconsin. This one is from the Michigan Indian Education Council. It's the 51st annual Critical Issues Conference. I'm going backwards. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is coming up in March 11th through 13th. And each year they have a theme, and this theme is Shkade, or fire. And so a lot of their presentations throughout this will have the theme around fire. And this is usually a really great conference every year. I got to help out with it a couple of times when I was a student at NMU. So it would be a great one to check out either this year or any years to come. This one is from the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. It is a 4-week course. It actually opened up today for registration. It's free, but you can get a certificate. You can pay for a certificate. It takes about 1 to 2 hours per week, and learners will join in to explore the impact of problematic narratives of Native Americans on U.S. society and education, and learn ways to recognize and share more complete narratives both inside and outside of the classroom. So I think that would be a great PD for any teachers trying to expand their inclusion of Anishinaabe content in their classroom. And right before we wrap up with a Jamboard, I just wanted to bring this up because it is Black History Month, standing in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. So please, please teach about Black and Indigenous people throughout the year, and not only during our respective months though. So, or when hashtags are trending. So just, it should be integrated in your curriculum year round, not during our respective months. So this resource is from Second Story Press, and it lists Black and Indigenous owned bookstores. So support those bookstores, support those artists. So we're going to go on to a Jamboard so I can get some questions, feedback from you all, and see how we can better help you along the way.
Okay, so Amanda, you're going to have to enable my screen share.
Okay.
So I am putting a link to a Jamboard in the chat. By show of hands, who here has used Jamboard before? Okay, at least a couple of you. Good few of you. Okay, perfect, great. So what we are going to do is, if Amanda lets me share my screen.
Well, did you request it, or do I have to do something else? I see one participant can share at a time, and I'm not sharing anymore, am I?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh.
You make host?
Okay, I think I figured it out. I think it's probably automatically set up like that. Okay, can you do it now?
Yes, that's right, Chuck. I like that. Yes, I can. Perfect. Okay. All right. So we've got just a little bit of time here. So I wanted to go ahead and ask you all to, I see a few of you on already. Perfect. To take about 45 seconds on each slide and answer each question on the slide. So The way that we'll ask you to do that is you'll see this menu on this bar on the left here. You click on this square here that looks like it has writing on it. That's your sticky note. Click on that and you can type a question like, how old are you? Question mark. You click save and it adds your sticky note to the Jamboard there. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one, but we'll give you again about 45 seconds per slide. We go till 6:30. Or is that 6:20?
I think 6:30.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start my timer. And again, we'll take about 45 seconds per slide. And I would like to add, we will, if we have time, try and answer as many of these questions from the Jamboard as possible. And if we do not have time, what we will do is we will follow up with all of you via email, send the slideshow, which has all of the links embedded in it so that you're able to access all of the resources that Amanda and I have shared. And we will try and make sure that is sent out next week. Okay, so we are a little bit over time. So we'll move on to the next frame here. So all you have to do to move on to the next frame with me is click this right arrow at the top here. Oh, you guys are all already on it. Perfect.
Can you show me again where to click?
To add a sticky note, do you mean, Chuck? No. You want a link to the actual Jamboard?
No, you said to click something. Is it up at the top?
Yes, so there is a right arrow up at the top here. So if you look at my cursor is moving to it, and that's how you get over to the next frame.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay. So, oh, looks like you guys have already added quite a bit here.
And I just want to let everyone know I added in the chat a link to the PDF of this presentation, but we will still send it out via email. But if you'd rather start diving into things right now, that's in the chat right now. It's a PDF and it goes to a Google Drive. And then also the survey at the beginning, in case if you missed it, we'll still want that feedback from you. That'd be great. Rich, thanks.
Okay, so it looks like lots of you have already added. So what we'll do for the next 10 minutes or so is we will go through and try and answer the questions that have been added onto the Jamboard. So this first one here is, where can I find guidance on local sources, organizations in my area to learn more about local Indigenous history? And so Sheboygan area. So Sheboygan is actually located within the Little Traverse Bay Band's service area. And so what we recommend is looking into the map that Amanda shared that's embedded within the My Open Book, and take a look at what tribes are closest to you. And if you're not in an area where there's a tribe close by, I would recommend reaching out to some of the urban Native serving community organizations in your area. There are a couple of big ones in Detroit. One is called the American Indian Health and Family Services. And in addition to serving the health needs of the urban community there, they also do lots of cultural programming for families and are a great connection to have there. So I would recommend reaching out to the tribe that you're closest to, or a Native serving organization in your area.
That was me that did that, and I'm wondering, is it appropriate for me to like reach out, for example, to the Burt Lake Band, so far as maybe gathering some histories from them, or is it appropriate to even see if anybody wants to push into my classroom to talk about the history of that group? Or is that foisting on them something that's really my job as a European descendant?
As we had talked about, anytime you consult with a tribe or a Native group, you're really engaging in some of those best practices that we highlighted. And so I would encourage that. I would encourage doing that in a really respectful and good way. And, it's really about, building relationships with those tribes and tribal communities. And so, think about like, I don't know if you sit on any boards of organizations or, maybe you're involved in your local church, but it's really tough doing cold calling when you're, asking for support or resources. And it is always so much more effective when you have a relationship, and then you can, make an ask. And so I would recommend, really introducing yourself just as you would to, any other organization, and, be mindful of capacity. The capacity may be there and it may not, but I think really definitely stating your intentions about wanting to do things in a good way and wanting to, connect with Burt Lake Band in order to teach accurate histories. I've never heard one tribal person ever say, I'm really pretty comfortable with inaccurate histories and not having a voice in this narrative. So I think you're on a good path there if you frame it in that way. Who might we contact with questions? You can contact both Amanda and I. Amanda is going to follow up with sharing the presentation, which again includes all of the links to all the resources that were shared, and she will include my contact information in this and in that email. And if we aren't the person to answer, we're connected with a pretty broad network of Native educators at tribes, at universities, and even within the K-12 school systems. So if we can't help you, we'll find someone who can. Is there a way to ensure Michigan teachers have courses in Michigan history of Anishinaabe to be certified? Yes, that's what we are working on now. The way that the process was explained to us was first the standards for students change, and then that creates a domino effect of the standards that are developed or updated by the Office of Educator Excellence. So that is forthcoming.
I do want to interrupt real quick. We'd have 4 minutes left, and then the next presentation, Michigan's Energy System and Civics Action, needs to log in.
Okay, perfect. So we will get to maybe 2 more questions here, and then we will try and answer the rest in the email. When do you think the resource will be available? It is a living document. It is being worked on currently. It is being added to, and we have found a web host. So that will be available as soon as the host tribe is able to get with the work group and make that happen. So it's coming hopefully before the beginning of next school year.
And when we send out the presentation and what I've linked in the chat, you can start looking through the spreadsheet. And if any kind of accessing issue comes up, just let me know, because in case of some sort of permission gets messed up. But the spreadsheet's already live and living, and you can start working with that right now.
Yep, so it's in spreadsheet form right now, but I've seen it. It is very well organized. It is easy to work with, and it's fantastic. I am so grateful to all the women that put work into that. Okay, last question here. How does being a separate recognized nation impact individuals within the nation and moving between in and out of nations? Well, I will share that for one, as a citizen of Little Traverse Bay Bands of Wadawwa Indians, I actually have a dual citizenship. I'm a citizen of my tribal nation, and I'm a citizen of the United States. And in terms of how it impacts moving in between nations, crossing borders, I can actually use my tribal ID to board an airplane. And it is recognized as a form of ID by TSA. In terms of moving across borders, unfortunately, after 9/11, that was made more difficult. But according to the J Treaty, natives should be able to move freely back and forth across the US-Canadian border. But again, that's been complicated by 9/11. However, Canadian tribal citizens are also citizens of the US according to the J Treaty. So good question. It is now 6:29. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. These were great questions. I want to say Chimigwech, thank you so much to all of you for coming, showing up today. It's 6:30 on a Friday. I know it's been a long week. It was so nice out, and Amanda and I were lamenting about how we were prepping for this rather than getting outside and getting the sunshine. So we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Yes, Chimigwech, thank you.